Hi guys, it's Yvonne with Western Star Art and Wear. Hey, I'm back to read another chapter of the book. As I'm reading the book again with you guys, I was realizing a few things that, well, first off, I was told I'm saying a few words wrong. It doesn't surprise me at all. But the town is actually, I believe, Maban instead of Mabane, and it's a gully puncher hairpin. I know what they are, I just wasn't sure exactly how to say it. So, anyway, those are a couple of things. Also, one thing I want to point out is that in the very first chapter of this book, my dad speaks of going on the trip into town with the Model T and the family and the kids they had at that time. And in the chapters I'm getting ready to read, one of them, he speaks of how his father came to get the Model T. And so he kind of goes back and forth in time in his reflecting of this story, which seems like he was almost a little bit before his time, because I don't know, a lot of the shows that we watch, I realize now, they do that and they don't give you any warning. And so when you're watching the show, all of a sudden it flips back 10 years or forward 2 years and back and forth. So this book is a little bit like that. And so if you get a little confused, then maybe as I keep reading, it will play out a little bit better for you and you'll understand. But so in the either chapter 5 or 6, I don't remember, he tells about how his dad comes to get the Model T, and also he speaks of the different either farms or plantations that his family worked for as sharecroppers. And I'm a little confused too as to when they moved and stuff, but there's several that they moved to and from, and his mom speaks of the one that she wished they wouldn't have left. And so anyway, that's a little bit of it. I hope it's probably clear as mud, but hopefully you'll understand it once I'm reading it. So anyway, this is chapter 5 that I'm getting ready to read. When we went by Doc Baines, there were peacocks walking across the road and all kinds of chickens and ducks, a whooping and a hollering and a raising hell in general. The doc's dog, Gordon, a setter, barked and came and smelled us and trotted off. We all knew him anyways. When we got home, all made a beeline to get our hot clothes off and into something that felt better. I sure felt better in some overalls rather than them starched breeches. Our crop had been ruined by the hail, and Pa plowed it up. We raised tobacco and feed for the animals, plus things to can and dry for the winter. Everything had been beat up and gone. Pa was mighty sad for a long time. Ma and him had a lot of talks about what to do. One day the doc came by, and I had been sleeping, and the flies had gotten in my mouth, and my lips was swollen twice its size. "What's the matter with that boy?" he asked. "Well, sir, Dr. Bain," Ma lowed, burning with shame or embarrassment. She always had trouble with the upper class. "He's been sleeping in that, and the flies have gotten to his lips and poisoned it or something." The doc got down and took a look at my lips. He took something from his bag and doctored it up. "You tell Tom to come over to the store and get some stuff to make some screens for this house. That's a shame for somebody to live in such unsanitary conditions." "I'll tell him, sir," Ma says. With that, he rode off on his horse with his setter trotting behind him. Ma found Pa and relayed the message to him. "What business has that feller poking his nose and telling me how to run my family?" Pa says. "I think he was just trying to be helpful," Ma says. "No, he thinks he owns me, and I'm going to get out of this place," Pa says. "Now you, Tom, don't be cutting off your nose to spite your face," Ma lowed. "Why, that man has been good to us ever since we rented this place. He don't even charge us for his doctrine. I'm tired of his crap, and I aim to leave here, and that's all there is to it." Pa had a hard head, and he didn't give very often whether he was right or wrong, seems as how. The crop had been destroyed, and all we had for a year had been wiped out. Pa was a hard man to reason with in those days. He went and got the stuff and made the screen doors anyways. It sure did help. And they give us some swatters to kill them that was already in the house. I had me a grand old time frailing the flies in that house. One morning, Ma says to me, "Lonnie, I want you to go with me to Lily and Lambus down the road here a piece. I haven't visited her and Lambus in a spell, so you and me will amble on down there and see them all. You can play with them young'uns whilst I visit." I really didn't have any choice in the matter, but I said that I'd be ready when she was. She put on her bonnet and got a bag of something for Aunt Lily, and we started off down the road at a pretty good clip. Mom made about 130 a minute, and it took some doings to keep up with her. Most times my shirt tail was a sticking out straight, and I was a hassling for air. She didn't seem to take any notice. She just kept getting up. Before we got to the house, Ma and I stopped to pee. We won't be able to go until we get back, so we better get it done now, Ma says, so I let her rip. Ma got up and had a strange look on her face. She looked up in the sky and says that the world is a-coming to an end today. Yes, sir, the Lord is coming for sure. He gonna gather up all the Christians and take them home to glory. I could see that she was getting into it by the look of her face. It was fire red and looked about like she was gonna bust a gut. But the sinners, that's a different thing altogether. When he comes a-biling down out of the sky with fire and brimstone, he's gonna look upon them with scorn and cook their ass to a crisp. Hallelujah to the Lord and all his glory, because the saints are going to go to marching in. Woo-wee. Won't that be a time when we walk them streets of gold? I'm going to have to come on here with a little of that song, When the Saints Go Marching In. Yes, sir, I want to be in that number when we go biling up into the sky with our Maker. First off, I didn't know a thing that she was talking about, or care much either for that matter, but if it was my Ma said that was the way it was going to be, why, that's how it was. After all the commotion, we got ourselves together and proceeded on to Aunt Lily's. As we moseyed up in the yard, Aunt Lily came running out. Lord a mussy, if it ain't Rose and one of her leastons. She grabbed Ma and put a bear hug on her and gives her a big kiss. This is strange, because we never did kiss in our house. Fact is, I don't think that I ever did see Ma and Pa kiss. They used to go down to the barn every now and again, and I used to peep at them. Weren't a lot to it, just a lot of sweating and moaning. The old ones told me that's how they made babies, the young'uns that is, but they never kissed. Aunt Lily grabbed me and plants one right on the mouth. Rose, you come on in the house. I got a million things to tell you. You girls take Lonnie down to the barn and show him around. Play nice with him, you hear? All right, Ma, they said to her. One of them was Sophronia or something like that, and the other one was named Rosebud. Both of them was quite a bit older than me. They showed me the stock and that they had a billy goat tied up on a chain out back. You watch that darn goat, Frone said. He pees in his whiskers and throws it all over himself. Ain't that the darndest thing you ever seen, Frone lowed? I agreed with her. She picked up a stone and chucked it at him. Come on back here to the barn, she told me, and I followed her back. The barnyard was full of animals, chickens and such. We stopped at the hog pen and looked over the swine. They were a pretty good lot, some Pole, China, and Duroc. One of them mounted a sow. Rosebud, come over here and look at that. It was quite a sight to behold for a boar of 5 or 6. We stayed around there for a while and throwed them in some corn to chew on. They seemed to like it very well. We walked down to the garden and got us a tomato that hain't been hit by the hail. It tasted good. We ate quite a few, and then we ambled on up to the house. By the time we had reached the porch, Ma was coming out, getting ready to go back home. Well, there you are, she said. I hope you and the girls had a good time. Yes, ma'am, I said. I didn't tell her what went on at the barn or my sex education I had come across. To me, it was just another day of Skeeter's life in general. Ma put her bonnet on and hiked up her dress and tied the belt tighter, and we started off down the road like a rookie ranger on a forced march. We were sure picking them up and laying them down. Mom didn't say much on the way home, so I was left to keep up. Funny thing about Mom, she was one of the best walkers I ever saw and strong as a mule in all she did. Yet in the end, she died a cripple. Pa never walked well, however. He lived to 89, and he was still walking up to a month before he died. And then this is chapter 6. Things happen strange in life. How we pulled in the yard after about half an hour or better. Things weren't any different than when we left. Daisy, the cow, had wound herself up on the post with her chain and pooped on the post, which gave me some idea of what she thought of us in general. Mom says, ain't you a pretty sight? Poop from one end to the other. Now she commenced to unwind her, poop and all. Skeeter, you take her on down to the well and give her a drink of water and turn her loose in the barnyard. Yes, ma'am, I said. I took a hold of her chain and ambled on down the lane to the barn. She was a gentle cow, and anyone could handle her. She'd give 50 pounds of milk a day with a couple of pounds of butter. Ma always made sour cream, butter. It was show some kind of a good on a biscuit and some wild strawberry preserves on it. Now that's what I call a serve brisket. Serve breakfast. Sorry, tongue tied. Ma used to give me a biscuit with a piece of country salt cured ham on it, and that sure was good. Anyways, I put Daisy in the barn lot after I gave her water from the trough. Pa was down in a cornfield cutting what was left of it to feed to the stock. This Gitney pulls up in the yard and lets out a blast on the horn. I'd never heard the likes, not being very old and never seeing many cars, had its bearing too. It sounded like wee-oo, wee-oo, oh. And he come on down here a couple of times. All the chickens flew up in the trees and the ducks made a beeline for under the kitchen. Fido and Watch started to bark their heads off, and Uncle Gilliam's dog Jack was a cur, and he had been staying with us for a spell. He tried to bite the wheels and tires. Ma came out of the kitchen, was straightening out her apron. Howdy, Mr. Warren. How you getting on? I'm just tolerable, Rose. How are you? Well, I'm about the same, I guess. Sure was a bad storm we had back a few days ago, Ma lowed. That's what I come here to talk to Tom about, Rose. If you'll tell me where I can find him, I'll be obliged to. Calvin Warren was the Doc Baines' son-in-law. He married one of the two gals the Doc had. I don't know which. About that time, Pa comes up in the yard. Tom, if you call that yellow cur off, I got something to talk to you about, Calvin says. Pa yells at the dog, and the dog lays down. Pa says, come on over here under this tree and fire away. Hain't no time like the present. Tom, I hear you're talking about leasing this place after your bacca had done gone under. I don't know who told you, but that had come to mind a time or two, Pa lowed. Well, I got this place down on Hyco that I want to rent to you. From me, Calvin says. I don't know, Calvin. That's old Granny Kennel place, and it's all washed out from what I hear, Pa says. Well, some of it is, Tom, but there are about 100 acres that ain't, and it'll raise the best bacca you ever saw, Calvin says. It's that I seen glass land, and you know what tobacco that raises. Yeah, Pa says, that's good bacca. Best I ever saw. Some farmed in Pinot got a good price, too. I think it was some farmer. Well, you go on down there and out a crop, and you can call your own shots. Whatever you want to do, you can. I'll tell you something else. Since you are such a good bacca farmer, I'll stand for you a new Model T Ford, brand new, that you can have and won't have to pay anything till fall. Damn me if that don't sound pretty good to me, Pa says. I never had me no Gitney. Well, you got one now if you want it, Calvin says. By gall, I'll make a bargain of that, Pa says, and stuck out his hand. They shook on it, and in those days that was as good as a signed paper. Come on here, and I'll take you a ride in my car. She's a Rio flying cloud. Look at them seats, real leather. Hain't she a beauty? That she is, Pa says. I was standing there all eyes and not making a bit of noise. Calvin says, come on, boy, you can ride in the back seat. He opened the back door and I crawled in. Pa was in the front looking pleased as he could be. Calvin says, now, Tom, I've got to set the spark in the gas when I start her. They'll show you how when you get yours for your down in Roxborough. Mr. Warren set his lever and got out and twisted her a couple of times. She let a backfire, sounded like Pa's old 12-gauge. Pa jumped up in his seat and was ready for the brush. And I was going to be right behind him, but Warren calmed us down and told us that most cars did that sometimes. Anyways, when we got twisting her this time, she took off with the smoke biling out of the hood. She sounded like Wincho, Wincho. Hot dang, listen to her, he said. Hain't she purring like a kitten? I sure didn't make any comment, 'cause kids in those days weren't supposed to make anything that sounded like a noise. Well, sir, he got in her and let the brakes off and put her in reverse. She come around like a couple of young mules laying into the collar. He made some other adjustments and we set off down the road. She wouldn't have done more than 20 miles per hour flat out, but it felt like you was on a runaway horse. Once you got straightened out and she was a running smooth, it was a pleasure for sure. I could see Pa was enjoying this to the fullest, and old Calvin was a talking hit too. Dang me if she sure ain't making tracks, he says to Pa and chucks Pa in the ribs. Woo-wee, Pa says. Just wait till I get me one of these things. I'm going to get on down the road, and I ain't going to be long about going. He took off his hat and beat it on his knees. Man a livin', listen to that purr. I just can't wait till I get mine. Pa stops and eyeballs Calvin. You ain't lying about this, are you? Pa fixes him with a whammy. No, sir, I'm telling you the gospel, Tom, and that's a fact. All right, I'm pending on you for yo to stand by your word. We went on down the road a piece and turned her around and started her back a little ways, and Calvin turned off the main road and geared her down to a crawl. I want you to look over this back of land I was telling you about and see if I won't telling you the truth. We stopped and they got out. Pa picked up a handful of dirt and oozed it up in a ball. He opened it and looked at the inside of the dirt. Yes, sir, that's isinglass land for show. Looks real po, though. Nobody been turning under anything for a spell. That's the truth, Calvin says, and I want you to come on here and build this place back up and make us both some money. Well, now that I can do, Pa says. We got back in the Gitney and made it back to the home. When we got back, he left us off in the yard and blowed the horn a couple of times and left. Things went pretty well for a few days and nothing out of the ordinary happened. Mr. Warren came back one morning and took Pa off to Roxbury to get his new machine. After he was gone off, Grandpa came up in his buggy with his dog. He was very pale and his horse was skinny. They all looked pretty bad to me. Lord of mercy, Ma says as she come out of the house. What has happened to Grandpa? I'm in pretty bad shape, Rosie Lode. That I can see for sure, Ma says. You get out and come on in and I'll find you a place to lay down and rest. You take them dirty clothes off you. You're a sight, Albert. You and Wright take Grandpa's hoss and curry her and give her feed and water. I'll see if I can find something for the dog. Old Fido and Jack and Watch was a smellin' up Nick. He didn't give much ground, though. He was a tough old shepherd. After they went off and laid down, Ma gave me a hoe cake to give Nick. He gobbled it up like nothing. I petted him a little, and we became friends. Ma was fixing a place for Grandpa to lay down. After she got him bedded down, she went in the kitchen and made him some soup or broth and took it to him. The boys pulled the buggy out of the way and stabled the hoss and gave her some feed. She went a-chomping and a-chomping. That evening, Pa came back with his Model T. He pulled up in the yard and blowed the horn. It had a different sound than Calvin's. It sounded like, I-ugger, something like that. We all came out to look it over. He wouldn't let any of us get too close to it. Stand back there, he said. I don't want any of you young'uns a-messing with my car. Then people done teach me how to take care of her, and I don't want anybody else messing with it. You hear? So we looked on from afar. My ma was trying to get his attention. Finally, she broke in and said, Tom, your pa's here. What a mess is he into now? Pa asked. He looks pretty sick to me. I put him in that little room and give him some soup. Well, I guess I better go in and see what is the matter with him. Now, Pa goes into the house to see Grandpa. He stays in there with him for quite a while, then come out. Albert, you bridle Charlie and go over to the doc's and tell him that my Pa needs a doctor or something, maybe some medicine. Tell him I will stand for it, whatever it is. Pa always said that, but it always came out the same, like I'm going to have to get around to paying the doctor, but it never happened. Sorry, I had to pause. Our little dog is sick, and I was worried about him. Anyway, I think I left off here. Pa goes into the house to see Grandpa. He stays in there with him for quite a while and then came out. Albert, you bridle Charlie and go on. Oh, no, I did read that. Okay, so I think I had gotten to where Pa always said that, but it never came out the same. Like, I'm going to have to get around to paying the doctor, but it never happened. That's where I got to. I wonder why he didn't drive the Model T over there, but kids weren't supposed to know anything, and I was a kid. Long about milking time, the doctor comes over on his horse, and he goes in and examines my Grandpa. He comes out and gives Ma some pills to give to him. Give him a couple of these an hour, Rose, for the next day or two. I sure will, sir, Ma says. He comes up to Pa and tells him that his pa was pretty sick with a half a dozen things wrong with him. Malnutrition was one of them. Feed him good and get him up in a day or so, and he'll be all right. Much obliged to you, Doc, Pa says. I'll get around to you shortly. Where did you get that car, Tom? He asked. Well, I've been dealing in a few things, Pa says. Since I lost my crop, I have to get on with life. Don't go and get yourself into something that you'll be sorry for, Tom, the doctor says. You should stay here where you are and raise your family. Things will pick up next year. I hear that they will get a hail insurance and it will be reasonable. Well, I'll let you know, Pa says. The doc mounted and rode off. And that's the end of chapter 6. I hope you're enjoying it. Sorry I had to stop. Our little dog, we just found out he's got like a heart condition and he starts coughing, and we're giving him pills, but it worries me a little bit. Anyway, I hope I didn't mess up too bad on reading it this time. I will be back in a day or so with another chapter, and I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye.